Are you stuck in the same old routine at work? Do you find yourself hitting a creative wall, unable to see beyond your current perspective? It's time to break free and unlock the power of fresh perspectives. Well, this is David Guthrow back with another episode of Discover Fresh Perspectives. Today, it's my pleasure to be here with Louise Levesque Burley and Mr. Fig. So welcome to both of you.
Thank you, Dave. Happy to be here.
So one of the things when you're trying to figure out what we're going to talk about today, Louise said, so what fascinates you about me as something to talk about? And I thought, well, first of all, I'm supposed to ask the questions, but that was a really good one to start with. And I say, what fascinates me about you, Louise, is that you are unsighted, and you don't seem to let anything get you down. Like you always seem to find a wonderful perspective, wonderful way to look at things, and you spend way more thinking and talking about what you can do rather than what you can't do. Is that fair?
Well, yes, it is, Dave. First of all, being non-sighted, Dave, when I get up in the morning, I don't think about my 9 different health challenges that I have. I just do what I need to do, or what I'd like to do, or what I can do. And here's the thing. A lot of people do not know that a non-sighted person can do a whole lot of different things, not on our own, when we have support. And that is why, oh, by the way, I do have my team member with me, and he's on the floor, Mr. Fig. Mr. Fig that's not his real name. I won't disclose his real name because of security. Because when I do public speaking or workshops or group coaching, I don't want to share his real name because people will say, oh, Mr. Fig, he can't relate to that name because that's not his real name. So if you were to say his real name, it would distract him and he would no longer focus to keep me safe. So that's why I came up with an abstract Mr. Fig name. And that keeps both of us in focus of our duties. So going back to your question, no, I do not think about, but here's what I do think about is how I can help you see what you cannot see and make the impossible possible for you in your life or your entrepreneurship or your career or your job. And there's ways around that, Dave.
So can you give me an example of that? Like, I like that thought of, help you see things that you may not be able to see. So could you give me 1 or 2 examples of that, please, Louise?
Okay. So first, I heard a quote that the word impossible is not a fact, merely an opinion. So I really like to start with that. And an example of that, okay, well, let's go back to my very basic 30 years ago when I started to go get guide dogs. I was petrified of dogs. I had the only exposure I've had with any type of dog were negative, and I could not see myself trusting a dog to cross 4 lanes of traffic safely. That was beyond my imagination. However, I was not a very good white cane user. I would lose them in manholes, and then I'd be stuck with no cane, yelling for help at the corner of the street. That happened to me a couple times. Another time, the car drove over my tip of my white cane, and it bounced out of my hand on top into the car, back into my hand. I was left with a hockey stick to go home. So And my husband, Stephen, always said, Are you going out today? Like, are you going to come back safely?" So I decided to go and, you know, take the risk of going out and see what I could come back home with. And Stephen says, "Well, Louise, you got a plane ticket. And um, if you don't like it, you don't like the experience, come home without a dog." And so off I went, and I didn't fall in love right away because I was the fear consumes you, right? So this is where you learn to really focus. Okay, how bad did I want a guide dog? Well, I really wanted to go places safely. I wanted to go not just independently. I didn't want to be hanging on to people's arms. I wanted to go flying, airplane, train, buses. I wanted to live an adventurous life.
Hmm.
So I really, really focused on that. So I was there a month, and I fell in love with my first guide dog, Medusa, 30 years ago, the second week.
Wow.
So as you can see, Dave, it's about what is it that you have in your gut that you want. Just because you think it's not possible, don't think it's not possible for someone else.
That's such a great point. Now, focus on what you want first of all, like having that goal or that desire. And I'm just going to interrupt for just a second, go back because it just occurred to me. I know you do a lot of public speaking, and you've got a great sense of humor, which I think is really helpful. And I was just thinking about some titles for some topics, and one would be always bring a spare cane, right? Because
Yeah.
right, because there's like, who would ever think to do that, right? But it's one of the ways for those that are using canes
Yeah.
to continue to be enabled in spite of what might happen to their
Yeah.
cane. I just saw the visual picture of that was incredible. I think that could be a great keynote if you wanted to add another one to your
Yeah,
collection.
exactly. Yeah.
So Louise, you've got this indomitable spirit, and I don't use that term lightly because I do see you demonstrating that. So, was that something that you learned? Did you come through a dark place and decide I don't want to be that way anymore? Did you take a training program? Where did that come from?
Well, I need to say that my it came from my family, my parents. When I was born, they told my parents that they were going to have a handicapped child. That was the word used back then.
Mhm.
And they decided to go ahead and have me. And they support. And here's the key to life, whether it's your personal or professional life, when you have support, you can achieve anything that you desire. And my parents, they 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 how would I say this? I didn't walk until the age of 4, and I wanted to walk because I wanted to play with the other neighbors, my cousins, everybody, right? So we had a house, and the laundry was in the basement. So when mom would go down to the laundry room, I they would carry me around the house. She would place me in this white, large vinyl chair with wooden arms. So I would glide myself to the edge of the chair, and I would like, "Okay, Louise, you're on the edge. Can you put your feet down the floor?" And I did that again. I focused on wanting to walk because they had told my parents, because I was born with chronic juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, I would never walk. And I started wearing glasses at the age of 2 because I was diagnosed with visual impairment. What you could see at 10 feet, 200 feet, I could see at 10 feet. And it was like looking through a foggy day. So I did this little sliding to the edge of this chair many, many times. Then I put a foot down, then another foot. And then 6 months later, my dad was a traveling salesman and he inspired me to become a traveler and make a difference in people's lives. He was selling pantyhose, keychains, all odds and ends. Back then, the manufacturer, they had salespeople on the road instead of selling on the internet. So what has happened is one day every Sunday as a family, we sat around. We went to church, sat around. Mom was a cordon bleu cook. And for 2 or 3 hours, we talked about our week and if we had a positive week, negative week, why. Everybody had a chance. So when it came my turn around the table, I had 2 brothers and mom and dad. I got up, stood up. My father dropped his fork because he hadn't seen me. No one had seen me stand up, pushed my chair a little bit and took a step forward. And from then on, I started walking little by little. So again, persistence, that is key. The focus, persistence, and imagine how is it going to feel when I can walk to the fridge and get my own glass of milk, right? How's it going to feel going outside and playing with the neighbors, the other kids? So the feeling, when you can attach the feeling to what you want, that's when you're going to make the impossible possible for you.
So I want to focus on a couple of things. And first of all, you were very fortunate to have support. You know, I think there's a lot of people that need support for a whole variety of reasons. I mean, it could be
Yes.
physical, it could be mental, it could be emotional, whatever.
Mhm.
But they feel that they should do it on their own and that asking for support is a sign of weakness. So,
No.
do you have anything you would say to people that embrace that approach?
Well, Dave, I was there once. Okay. I would never ask because I would think, like you just mentioned, a sign of weakness. It would be also taking away my independence, right? Those were my thoughts. However, it goes with your self-esteem and confidence. The more you think you are worthy and deserving, the more you will be able to ask. And there's nothing wrong to ask. I have a friend that I ask, can you help me do groceries online? Because a lot of the items are pictures, and my voice software does not recognize pictures,
Hmm.
only recognize text. Uh, you know, Asking is actually going to, how would I say, it is not a sign of weakness, but to me, it's strength. We as human beings need each other. I know that we've been in a journey of seclusion for a while. You know what? Connection is key. It's really a key to helping each other out to make each other successful in whatever that is. I mean, somebody, as an on-sighted, learning the white cane, that's a skill. I had to learn it, but I wasn't good at it. Learning to own a guide dog, being responsible for the dog. I had to learn how to do that because I knew nothing about dogs. So being connected to communities, being connected to other friends, family, colleagues, networks. I think that's key to each other, and That's what I have experienced in my life.
It's just, and it's a theme I think that's run through a number of these podcasts is the importance of relationship.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think more so than ever, like, you've got all
Mhm.
kinds of social media where you have contacts, but not relationships. And
Yeah. Yeah.
my hypothesis is that I'll speak for myself. I'm more willing to ask someone for help if I have a relationship with that person and
Yeah.
a positive relationship with that person. Because I think there's also a possibility of having toxic relationships. But then I question if I would even consider that a relationship. And I know that I am pretty darn independent. I've been in my own business for a gazillion years, and I have a real problem asking for help or support. But lately, I was starting to get over that, maybe 30 or 40 years too late. And I find
No.
typically the response is, "Why didn't you ask sooner?" Because we have this mask of
Yeah.
self sufficiency
Yeah.
that means that people don't want to offend by offering help, which is crazy.
Yeah, and people want to help. That's the other thing I've noticed over the years. Like, you know, of course, when they see you have a disability, they even want to help more. They don't necessarily know how to or what to do or what to say, but they people have the desire to help. It's just that we we don't really need to be on our own in this society. The more we're together, connection, relationship, you know what? That's humanity. That's real humanity, not robotic humanity.
Yeah, I find another it's just triggered a number of thoughts, and one of them is we are. I should say me, but I'll say we in this case. I'll drag some other people in with us, but afraid to offer help because we're afraid that person might be insulted by it.
Mhm.
And I'll give you an example. So, can I you see someone that's struggling with 18 packages hanging on every appendage they have and saying, can I help with that? Oh no, I'm fine. As you can see, they're obviously not. And so all you need is someone snapping at you once when you've made that offer. That I think we tend to extrapolate that to others and say, well, you know, if they need help, they'll ask for it. And so there's this crazy
Yeah,
thing about the fear of judgment around
yeah,
offering help or receiving help
yeah.
that so
Teeter.
much gets in our way.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. And some people, you know, they really don't want help and they don't know how to communicate it and it comes across as negative. But I'll tell you, when I was on the corner of the street with no cane and the cane in the sewer, and somebody walked up, I said, "Oh yes, can you call the police so I can get home?" you know, help is a real kind of funny word. I like to use support because
Mhm.
support is kind of like help is to me is like, "Oh, the house on fire! Help! Help! Help!" You know, kind of final.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and this is all very interesting. And, I think, let's see, I had a really key question to ask you, and now it's flying around the room somewhere. I'm just waiting for it to land. Oh yeah, yeah. So what are some things that you do to keep up? Like as I said, you're one of the most resilient people I've ever met. I can't remember any conversations that I've had with you, either one on one or over the phone, where I've not been impressed about. Yeah, this is life, and you were so resilient and going forward and not being held back by anything. So is there a vitamin?
no, I'm very grateful to be alive. And my heartfelt mission in life is to help people in whatever way I can. And the thing is you got to love. it's an inside enthusiasm about life and people in general. I'm not, how would I say? I I really enjoy my time alone. I balance because of different things, health reasons and that kind of thing. I balance my life when I'm in a crowd, when I'm presenting versus me and Mr. Fig going out for a walk versus shopping versus cooking versus it's finding your spot in your life that you can really feel, yeah. For example, when I need to process or develop a workshop in my mind, I'm working on being an MC at an event. And I thought, okay, how am I going to take these notes? Ta da, ta da. So I went right to the kitchen and I call it kitchen therapy. And I thought, okay, I'm going to put together some energy balls. I saw this on Zoom, a cooking show.
Huh.
And I thought, I'll throw that together and see how it comes out. That's how my MC process. So I relate things that are really dear to me to my work and vice versa with people, you know. So these, I don't know if I'm explaining it right, but it's more than a connection. It's a an emotion related to, you know, maybe somebody it's jogging. Maybe when they're jogging, they feel free. They're out in the open. Maybe it's motorbike, right? You're out in the air, in traffic, on the highway. Whatever it is for the individual, you need to connect. For example, I just want to share this. This just coming up for me. I have a friend who's totally blind, never saw anything from birth, incubation retina burnt. And so when she went to get a guide dog, she went first, and then she convinced me to go get one. Um, how do you explain to someone that has never seen a street 4-lane traffic?
Hmm.
You can't really say 3 inches, 6 feet wide. You there's no concept. So here's and this might explain what I'm trying to make a connection with is they took her body, okay, and they took her forehead to explain. And they drew on her forehead what the 4-lane traffic would look like.
Wow. Huh.
Okay. And for me, I'm not very good at direction because what they do is they put you in a van with your dog and 7 other um, students with guide dogs. And they let you out on big streets in Montreal and they say, okay, now you got to listen to your map because you got to find the van. And, you know, so you go down 2 lights straight, then you turn left, then you go down another 2 lights, and blah, 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 blah. And it goes on, right? I would never remember that because I'm too busy listening and maybe stop it to talk or whatever. So what they do is if you draw on someone's back or the back of your right hand, it automatically registers to the brain. And even if you don't think about it, it's there.
Huh.
So do you see the connection with, for her, my friend, she couldn't relate to 4 lanes of traffic. However, she could relate to her body. So she's never seen colors. So how do you do colors with someone? Well, for green, it's grass. She can touch grass and she doesn't know what green looks like, but she knows that it's like grass. Orange, you know, it's an orange, right? So you relate things into your life that is very meaningful to you and your surroundings.
That makes tremendous sense. You know, the importance of context and thinking about these things.
Hmm.
There's two other things that have occurred to me. And, and if I may be so bold, I think one of the things that I have just heard you say, and with respect to this emceeing, I think the questions we ask ourselves are very, very important.
Hmm.
And uh,
Hmm.
and I may be projecting here on your behalf, Louise. So stop me if I'm misinterpreting. But there's a big difference between saying, "Can I MC?" versus "How can I MC?" And I think you're a "How can I?" rather than whether or not I can. And I think that's a big distinction. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. It does. And you're right. I never really think about can I, because I know I can.
Yeah.
I just need to figure out the how to, right? And in pretty well anything. And it goes, David, goes, for example, I've always wanted to drive a car, right? Well, no one wanted to give me the keys to their car, right? Ah, no license, no insurance, no la la la, right? So my first job after 2 years, I went and got a loan and bought a car. And I was dating a gentleman. This was when my roaring 20s, I call it. And and it was a Buick Park Avenue. So imagine this visually impaired. I was visually impaired, but I could see with thick glasses behind this big wheel. I'm not a very large individual, I'm petite. And all I could see was the tip of the bumper. And I wanted to learn how to drive that car. That was mine. I put myself in debt for it. So one Sunday afternoon back then, the malls were not open. I asked my boyfriend to drive me to the mall. And I said, can you show me how to, where the brake and all of these details I need to know? And you sit in the passenger seat and you tell me, if I'm getting close to the mall, then tell me where to turn so I don't go in the mall. So we did that. And, I got excited, right? Got excited. It was beautiful, sunny afternoon. And I pressed the gas a bit more, a bit more, a bit more. Bang! Right? I wasn't in the mall, was close to it, but not in the mall. And those big cement posts that you can drive up and the garbage can is attached to it. Well, it just flew out of the pavement and so much. So my boyfriend was a lot older than me, and he said, "I just can't take you. You're too much. You're too active. You're too whatever." So he left me behind the wheel of the car and took off on foot.
Oh, jeez.
I got no license, Dave. So I shut the car off, and I thought, what do I do now? Right? The how to.
Yep.
So I got out of the car, found another young couple in their car having ice cream, and asked them to go get the police. I thought, well, at least the law can help me. I didn't think about details or anything. And I had a real good job. And the job consisted of fundraising in the community. So I was all over the paper. So the cops arrive and where's your license? And all I could say is there was two, a young one and an older one. And I kept saying, am I going to jail? Am I going to jail? And, they kept saying, well, your license. And then the younger fellow scratches his head and he says, weren't you in the paper a while ago? Yeah. Don't you work for this organization? Yeah. Am I going to jail? That's all I kept saying. He looks at his pal and he says, how in the heck are we going to write this one up? And no, I didn't go to jail because it was on private property, but I had to tow my car and get it fixed. and repair that post. And just to repair that post was like $1,500 40 years ago. So just goes to show, right? So the how to continues on and on, Dave. Yeah.
Like, I wish you could poke your hand through the screen because you could feel a huge smile on my face. That is incredible. And I would have wanted to know who dropped that post in front of you at the last moment. That just wasn't fair.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm sure it wasn't there when you started out.
Yeah.
Another thing that occurred to me, Louise, is that when you talk about having a guide dog, your pal,
Yes.
Mr. Fig,
Mhm.
that requires an incredible amount of trust. And I think with trust comes the need to be vulnerable,
Mhm.
right? Because you're really putting your life
Yep.
in the hands of a dog. And I think for so many of us, to truly trust someone, we're putting yourself as soon as you trust someone. There was a book called, I think, Trust and Betrayal in the Workplace by Dennis and Michelle Rena, written a number of years ago. And one of the comments on there that I liked was that, the greater you trust, the greater the potential for betrayal, which is kind of an interesting way of putting it. In this case, not so much, but the more you trust, uh, the more vulnerable you become. And I think as long as we're afraid of being vulnerable, it's really hard to trust someone. And somehow you've overcome that with Mr. Fig. But I think there's a lesson there for the rest of us as well.
Well, I think for me, trust begins with oneself. You got to be able to trust yourself fully without and this is how I do my trusting. For example, if I go to the hairdresser and um, some things I have to trust others a lot because it's a visual thing, right? I live in a visual world. I have to learn to adapt and accept things that maybe is challenging to me, but it's not to others. So, and when I go to the hairdresser and I get a new haircut, I always wait the first week. If I hear, "Oh, wow, Louise, that ever looked nice. Oh, when'd you get that?" You know, then that spikes a little conversation. Now, after a week, if I didn't hear anything, I figured, okay, well, that's not a very good cut. Nobody's, I'm out and about pretty well every day. So people know me. And so now if I hear a comment the first 2, 3 days, oh, wow, that's nice. Then the first time it's okay. It's just somebody saying a comment to be nice, right? That's the way the second time I start paying attention, I become more aware. And the third time for me, it's a confirmation. Yes, get it done again that way because you look hot. You see what I'm trying to say? You you need to become aware and know that yeah, trust starts with oneself and then trust what other people are telling you. Is it acceptable or is it trustworthy or should I discount it or discard it? Those are the things. And when we go and training, heavy training in getting a guide dog, we need to learn to trust ourselves because we have to judge a dog is a dog, Dave, you know? Like if I'm at the corner and the dog has got his head down sniffing and he's supposed to line me up with the traffic, right? I've
Right.
got to know, I've got to know that, yes, okay, now you know what to do. Trust yourself, Louise. You're going to cross 4 lanes of traffic. And I could not imagine a dog taking me over 4 lanes of traffic. But The first time it happened, and I was in the middle of the 4 lanes of traffic, this feeling, I the only word I could think of was freedom.
Mm-hmm.
I felt free as a bird. I thought, yes, I can do this, but I had to trust myself to make myself do it.
So in sharp contrast, I've got my miniature dachshund who's 12 years old is sitting in her bed beside me at the office, and I know if I was counting on her to get me across 4 lanes of traffic, and if there was something that even looked like a dog biscuit partway across, I'd be smudged. There'd be no hope whatsoever.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, we reward our guide dogs with treats, right? So once we got across the 4 lanes of traffic, we have to have these little treats, special treats, only takes a half a second for them to chew, because
Yep.
we got to stay in the beat, in the rhythm, they call it at school. So you reward them, and they remember, and so it it it's amazing what kind. I've learned so much in that training of a guide dog, uh, and becoming a team, because it's a process. It doesn't happen overnight. And the second week, the dog will pull all kinds of stunts, because they're shifting in their demeanor from the master who trained them to the new master, Louise, right? And in their heads, they get confused a little bit. So they'll do diagonal crossing if you're out and about. And you do this at school. You don't do this at your home yet. They'll skip a step if you go up or down this flight of stairs. They'll skip a curb and walking outside. If there's puddles, they'll make you walk in the puddle, and they'll walk around it. All sorts of nonsense behavior, like, you know, because they're shifting their process of thinking.
So, I could carry on this conversation for many, many hours, and I'm trying to think of the last time we were in the same room together, and it was quite a while ago. So at least 5 or 6 years, at least
At
that
least,
long.
yeah.
And I'm so glad we've been able to stay in touch. And I hope that some of the people that are listening see a lot of metaphors for them in the things that you've talked about. Like the most recent one you were talking about, it's like when you get a new manager and you're testing it, same guidelines apply, testing boundaries and things like that. And so many wonderful perspectives, Louise, and I really appreciate you taking some time to be here with me today. And I will put in, because I know you do speaking and things like that, and I'll make sure that I put your contact information in the program notes should people wish to have you come in and help people in their organization see how to make the impossible possible, which I think is a really great theme. But remember, always carry a spare cane. Maybe I. And so I'm David Guthrow. I've been here today with Louise Levesque Burley and Mr. Fig, and I look forward to hearing you. I'm on the wrong end of this podcast. Having you listen to the next episode of Discover Fresh Perspectives. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Subscribe now, because on Fresh Perspectives, every episode is an opportunity to explore new horizons and redefine what's achievable.